Tonight we embark on a thrilling journey back to the Viking Age, an era defined by fearless explorers, skilled craftsmen, and legendary warriors who sought riches, land, and glory across the seas. Before we start, settle in with a cozy blanket, dim the lights, and perhaps light a candle to craft the perfect atmosphere for our time-traveling adventure. This story unfolds best when you are completely relaxed. Take a breath and prepare for a journey to a world both beautiful and unforgiving, demanding strength, wit, and courage, far exceeding what we need in modern life. Congratulations, you have just awakened in the late 8th century along the rugged coast of Norway. The year is 793 CE, and you find yourself in a world vastly different from your own. The air is filled with the scent of salt, smoke, and pine. The muffled roar of waves hitting the rocks mingles with the cries of seabirds soaring above. You blink, attempting to acclimate to the faint light passing through the smoke hole in the ceiling. You lie on a hard wooden bench within a long house, a residence serving as home and gathering place for an entire family, or sometimes several. Furs and woolen blankets offer some cushioning against the rough wood, but not the soft mattress you are used to. Fortunately, this dwelling is cleverly designed to keep heat from the central hearth circulating throughout the area. The bad news, you are sharing it not only with people, but also with chickens pecking the earth floor. During the harshest winter nights, even larger livestock, the longhouse stretches before you, its wooden walls bowed like a ship's hull. Wooden posts support the thatched roof, and between them hang shields, spears, and everyday tools. You notice that everything here serves a purpose. There is no room for purely decorative items in a world where survival depends on practicality. Light streams from the smoke hole above the central hearth, where embers from last night's fire still glow faintly. As you sit up, your muscles ache from the firm sleeping surface. A woman with golden hair intricately braided around her head glances at you as she stirs something in an iron pot hanging over the freshly stoked fire. She wears a simple ankle-length dress of undyed wool, overlaid with a colorful apron-like garment fastened at the shoulders by two ornate brooches strung with beads. A small hammer-shaped pendant hangs around her neck, Thor's hammer, a symbol of protection. "You've slept long enough," she says in a language you somehow understand. "There's work to be done before the men return from fishing." Rubbing your eyes, you wonder how you'll blend into this world so unlike your own. Everything seems both familiar and alien. Simple wooden furniture, tools on the walls. The scent of cooking porridge carries a foreign note, highlighting your distance from home. Outside, voices call in a melodic language that flows like the ocean waves. Children laugh while chasing chickens across the muddy paths between buildings. Dogs bark excitedly as they follow their young masters. Through the open door, you see other long houses clustered together, smoke rising from their roofs into the crisp morning air. Beyond them is a shimmering fjord where several long ships are anchored. Their dragon-headed prows seem to watch over the settlement. Here the woman hands you a wooden bowl of thick porridge and says, "Eat quickly." Wool awaits spinning, bread needs baking, and the goats require milking. You accept the bowl, feeling its warmth against your palms. The porridge is bland yet filling, made of barley and oats with a swirl of honey. While eating, you observe others in the longhouse stirring, children rubbing sleep from their eyes, and an older woman already working at a loom in the corner. "My husband, Leif, and the others departed at dawn." The woman continues, glancing toward the door. "They aim to secure sufficient fish for the upcoming feast. The Jarl has summoned all free men to his hall in 3 days to deliberate the summer raids." The summer raids, these words send a chill down your spine despite the warmth of the fire. You have awakened at the very start of what history will designate as the Viking Age. Across the sea, the monastery at Lindisfarne remains unaware that this will be the year Viking longships arrive, initiating an age of exploration, trade, and violence that will forever alter Europe. Astrid, the woman who teaches you to spin wool with a spindle, clicks her tongue impatiently as you fumble with the unfamiliar tool. "Have you never spun before?" "A child knows how to do this," she says, taking the spindle and demonstrating with practiced motions. "What household did you come from that you don't know such basic skills?" You mumble something vague about being from far away, which satisfies her curiosity for the moment. She eyes your strange clothing with suspicion, but doesn't press further. Well, you're here now, and everyone works. That's the way of things, she says firmly. We survive together, or not at all. That statement encapsulates life in this era more effectively than anything else. In the Viking Age, survival hinged on community, with each person contributing their skills to the welfare of all. There were no grocery stores, hospitals, or safety nets outside of communal support. If crops failed or fish became scarce, hunger would result. If raiders arrived from neighboring settlements, everyone had to defend their home or face ruin. As the day unfolds, you observe Astrid's tasks, absorbing the cadence of daily life. Surprisingly, personal hygiene is highly esteemed among these people. The Vikings are remarkably clean compared to many of their European contemporaries. Weekly, typically on Saturday, their washing day or Lagar de Gore, everyone bathes, a custom that would be seen as extravagant in much of medieval Europe. The unfortunate reality is that almost every facet of daily existence demands strenuous physical effort. Preparing a meal involves hand-grinding grain with a stone, fetching water from the well, tending the fire, and cooking in heavy iron pots are necessities. Producing cloth begins with shearing sheep, followed by spinning wool into thread, weaving it on a loom, and sewing garments, all performed by hand and often in low light. Even the most basic remedies require herbs gathered from the wild and processed using ancestral knowledge. By noon, your back aches, and your hands are raw from unfamiliar labor. Astrid perceives your distress, but offers only a slight smile. You will gain strength, she assures you, without malice. Everyone does, or they fail to endure the winter. Winter, the word now holds profound significance in this world. Lacking central heating, electric lights to banish the long northern darkness, and modern transport for food from warmer lands, winter here transcends a season. It becomes a trial of preparedness, resilience, and communal unity. As the afternoon nears, a horn sounds from the shore. Astrid straightens, listening. They are returning, she says, setting down her weaving and hurrying to the door. Come, let's see what they've brought. You lead her into the settlement, where people are emerging from their homes and workshops, all moving toward the narrow wooden dock, where several boats are pulling in. These are not the massive, long ships you might anticipate. Those fearsome, dragon-prowed vessels are reserved for longer journeys and raids. These are smaller fishing boats, still skillfully crafted, but designed for coastal fishing rather than ocean voyages. As they secure their vessels, men call out greetings, holding up strings of fish to appreciative cheers from those on shore. Children run to meet their fathers and brothers, eagerly peering into the boats to see the day's catch. Dogs bark excitedly, darting between legs and sniffing hopefully at the fish being unloaded. Leif, a tall man with a reddish beard streaked with grey, raises a hand in greeting when he spots Astrid. His arms are muscled from years of rowing and fishing. His face was weathered by exposure to sun and sea. He appears to be in his 30s. Though it is difficult to be certain, life in this era ages people faster than in your time. We had good fortune today, he tells Astrid as he hands her several large cod. The sea was generous. Nior smiled at you, she replied, referencing the Norse god of the sea and fishing. Perhaps Leif agrees, then lowered his voice. Bjorn's ship returned while we were out. He brought news from the south. The Franks are weakening, fractured by brothers vying for power. Their coastal monasteries are unguarded, brimming with gold and silver. Astrid's expression darkens. You consider joining the raid, don't you? Leif glances at you, perhaps noticing you for the first time. We'll discuss this later, he says, before turning to help the other men unload their catch. You follow Astrid back to the longhouse, where she immediately begins preparing the fish. With practiced movements, she fillets the meat with a sharp iron knife, reserving the finest cuts for immediate cooking and hanging the remainder on racks by the fire for smoking and preservation. Here, she says, offering you a knife and pointing to a pile of vegetables, onions, carrots, and what appear to be turnips. Cut these for the stew. As you work beside her, Astrid begins to speak, perhaps noticing your curiosity about this world you found yourself in. My husband is a good, respected man in our community, she says, her knife never pausing in its work. He owns a boat and land to farm. We are blessed by the gods for having raised 4 children past infancy. We are blessed as 3 of them are grown. two sons with their own families and a daughter married to a man from another settlement. The fourth, a 12-year-old boy named Eric, currently helps his father with the boats, but life still dreams of more. Astrid continued, her voice lowering slightly, despite your solitude in the house. He listened to tales of those who had sailed to distant lands, who returned with silver and thralls. You realized that the word thralls referred to slaves, people captured in raids and brought back to work the farms and households of the Norse. Will he go, you asked, cautiously, unwilling to appear ignorant of their customs, yet curious about what was to come. Astrid's sighs is evident as she tosses the fish into the large pot. Men pursue glory and wealth, it is their nature, and the past few years have been difficult with poor harvests and harsh winters. Many believe raiding is the divine answer favored by those bold enough to seize what they require. As evening nears, more people gather in the longhouse. You encounter Eric there, a skinny boy with his father's reddish hair, who watches you with open curiosity. Several neighbors arrive, bringing contributions to the meal: freshly baked bread, fermented milk tasting like yogurt, and berries preserved from last summer's harvest. The longhouse is filled with conversation and laughter as people share news and stories. Leif and several other men sit near the fire, talking in low voices about lands across the sea, about monasteries filled with treasure, and the glory awaiting those brave enough to venture into unknown waters. You observe the youngest men leaning forward with eagerness, their eyes alight with visions of adventure and riches, whereas some of the elders appear more cautious, assessing risks against potential gains. One man suggests, stroking his beard thoughtfully, that we'll require at least 4 ships, enough men to swiftly overcome any opposition. Another adds that good weather is essential, as the Western Sea can be perilous even in summer. These monks at the monasteries are not warriors. A young man points out eagerly, "They won't fight back. Don't be too certain," cautions an older man with a long scar running down one side of his face. "Any man will fight when cornered, and their god is powerful, so they say, different from our gods, but powerful nonetheless." The conversation shifts to practical matters: how many men each ship will need, what provisions to take, and the best time to depart. You listen, realizing you are witnessing the planning of what may be one of the earliest Viking raids on the British Isles, events that will transform European history. Later, as people begin to depart and the fire dies down, life approaches you directly for the first time. Astrid tells you you are from distant lands, he says, studying your face in the flickering light, yet you speak our tongue. You search for an explanation that might make sense in this context. "I've traveled far," you say carefully, "and learned many languages along the way." Leif nods slowly, seemingly satisfied with this vague answer. "A traveler. Perhaps you've seen the lands we speak of, the kingdoms across the Western Sea." When you hesitate, he continues, "No matter. If you stay among us, you'll need to contribute. Can you work wood, metal? Do you know healing herbs? Can you fight?" The question catches you off guard. In your time, most people live their lives without needing physical self-defense. Here it is simply another necessary skill, like cooking or farming. "I am willing to learn." You offer, "I will study you for a moment longer than a nod." "Good. Tomorrow you will work with Gunnar the smith. He always needs someone to operate the bellows. Hard work, but you will earn your keep." As you settle back onto the wooden bench for the night, your body ached from unaccustomed labor, and your mind raced with everything you've experienced. The Viking Age is unlike what you imagined from books or television shows. It is not just battles and raids. Most daily life revolves around the endless work of survival, growing food, making tools, producing clothing, and maintaining shelter. Beneath the routine pace of daily life flows an unseen energy, a restless drive for something beyond simple existence. You have perceived this in how people discuss distant lands, the pride in their vessels, and the narratives shared by ancestors who ventured into uncharted waters, returning with riches and accounts of marvels. As sleep approaches, your final thoughts are fixed on the voyage yet to come. Having survived your first day in the Viking Age, harder tests are coming. Tomorrow brings new challenges, skills to acquire, and dangers to face. Beyond that lies the summer and the raids that will truly ignite the Viking Age, an era of exploration, conquest, and change that will reshape the world for centuries. Within the longhouse's darkness, where fire embers cast faint red light on wooden beams, you drift into dreams of dragon ships sailing toward distant shores. Their carved prows slice through waves like knives through cloth, carrying men seeking fortune, glory, and a place in the songs of generations. Morning breaks with the crow of roosters and the soft glow of dawn filtering through the smoke hole. You already know that in the Viking Age, people generally rise with the sun and sleep when darkness falls. This was a natural rhythm driven by necessity, not choice. The longhouse comes alive around you as Astrid builds the fire and starts preparing the morning meal. Today, as promised, you must work with Gunnar the smith. Following a breakfast of leftover fish stew and a chunk of dense, chewy bread, Leif guides you through the settlement to a small building set slightly apart from the others. From a distance, you can hear the rhythmic clanging of metal on metal and feel the heat radiating from the open doorway. Gunnar, Leif calls as you approach. "I've brought you help for the day." The smith straightens from his work, setting aside a glowing piece of metal. He is a mountain of a man with massive arms and a barrel-like chest. His beard is singed in places by flying sparks. Burns and small scars cover his forearms, evidence of years at the forge. "This one?" the gunner asks doubtfully, looking you up and down. He doesn't look strong enough to work the bellows for an hour, let alone a day. "Everyone starts somewhere," Leif replies with a shrug. "And we need those axe heads finished before the ships depart." Gunnar grunts in acknowledgement, then gestures for you to enter his domain. "Come then, let's see what you're made of." Leif leaves you in the smith's capable, if intimidating, hands. The forge is a simple structure with walls on three sides and an open front to allow heat to escape and light to enter. The heart of the space is the forge itself, a clay furnace where charcoal burns bright orange, fed by leather bellows that pump air to raise the temperature high enough to work iron. Gunnar simply explains, gesturing to the bellows. "These are large leather bags attached to a wooden frame with handles. When I say pump, you pump. Maintain a steady rhythm, not too fast, not too slow. The fire must remain hot, but excess air can damage the metal. Do you understand?" You nod, and he guides you to the bellows while he returns to his work. What looks like an axe head glows a brilliant red from the forge. He sets it on his anvil and starts hammering with practiced blows. Each strike molds the metal with precision gained from years of skill. "Pump," he orders, and you operate the bellows, pulling and pushing the handles to feed air into the forge. It proves tougher than it seems, resistance catches you off guard, and within minutes your shoulders and back protest from the constant motion. Sweat beads on your forehead, caused not only by exertion, but by the forge's intense heat. Gunnar works methodically, heating the metal, hammering it into shape, then reheating it again. You notice he doesn't use many tools: a hammer, tongs, a punch for making holes, and a few iron implements for specialized shaping. Yet with these simple tools, he creates objects of both beauty and deadly functionality. "Strong weapons mean survival," Gunnar says, noticing your interest as he plunges the red-hot axe head into a barrel of water, sending up a cloud of hissing steam. A poor blade fails when you need it most. A good one saves your life. Throughout the morning you discover that smithing is regarded as both a practical and a magical art. The gunner murmurs words, prayers, or charms to the gods, particularly Thor, the thunder god of strength, and Odin, the All-Father who sacrificed himself for wisdom and knowledge of the runes. The metal retains every hammer strike. Gunnar informs you while inspecting the edge of a freshly made knife. It holds the memory of the fire, the water, and the spoken words. These experiences bestow upon it strength and purpose. By noon, your limbs feel heavy and your back aches with pain. Yet Gunnar seems impressed that you endured so long without complaint. He requests a pause, and you gratefully sink onto a wooden stool as he produces a water skin and a bundle of dried meat and bread. While you eat, Gunnar becomes more talkative, explaining how iron is smelted from bog ore or mined from the earth, how it is mixed with carbon to create steel of varying hardness, and how different weapons require different properties in the metal. For an axe, he explains, the edge should be hard to maintain sharpness, but the body should be flexible to absorb shock. A sword must flex without breaking while retaining its edge through repeated strikes. He displays various weapons and tools at different stages of finishing, spears with socket fittings for wooden shafts, iron shield bosses to protect the hand holding the shield, knives for daily use, and more ornate items intended for the Jarl's Hall. Gunnar stated that the ships required at least 20 quality axes, returning to work after the brief rest. These were not for timber, but for people. His casual tone when discussing weapons intended to kill sent a shiver through you despite the forge's heat. For Gunnar and the populace of this era, violence was not an anomaly, but an expected component of existence. Raids were not viewed as immoral, but as a legitimate means to obtain wealth and status. Different times yielded different values. A harsh reminder of your true distance from home. The afternoon blurred into heat, sweat, and the rhythmic clang of hammering metal. When Gunnar finished the day's labor, the sun was low, and several axe heads hung from a rack, cooling and awaiting wooden handles. "You performed better than I anticipated," Gunnar admitted as you prepared to depart. "Come back tomorrow. There is more work before the ships leave." You stumble back to Astrid and Leif's long house, every muscle screaming in protest. Astrid takes one look at your exhausted face and smoky clothing and nods with approval. "Gunnar worked you hard, I see," she says, handing you a wooden cup filled with something that smells strongly alcoholic. "Drink, it will help with the pain." The beverage burns going down, but leaves a pleasant warmth in its wake. Some kind of mead, you realize, fermented honey mixed with herbs. As you gratefully sip, you notice the longhouse is unusually busy this evening. Extra lamps burn, casting flickering light on groups of women working together on various tasks. Some card wool, others spin, and a few work at looms, their fingers flying as they create intricate patterns in the fabric. "We're preparing for the men's journey," Astrid explains, seeing your questioning look. "Ships need sails, warriors need clothing, everyone contributes." You join the women, assisting with simple tasks that don't require skills you haven't yet acquired. While working, you listen to their conversations, ranging from practical matters to gossip and old tales shared for amusement. One woman comments while carding wool that the monastery at Lindisfarne has a roof that shines like gold in the sun, and another adds that books bound in jewels suggest their god must be very rich. An older woman states with authority that their god has only one eye, like Odin. Yet they claim he died and was resurrected. Like Balder after Ragnarok, someone else suggests referring to the Norse god of light and purity, son of Odin and Frey, who prophecy foretells a return after the final battle that ends the world. Perhaps all gods are the same deity, merely wearing different faces for different peoples, the older woman muses, earning disapproving looks from some of the others. "Careful, secret," Astrid warns. "Such talk is disrespectful. The gods hear all." The conversation shifts to immediate concerns. Which ships will go? Who will sail on them? What might be brought back? You learn that men from this settlement have sailed to distant shores before, but those journeys were mainly for trade, not raiding. This expedition is different, a more aggressive approach driven by necessity and opportunity. "3 poor harvests in a row," one woman whispered. The fish were not as plentiful as before. People were hungry, fearing the coming winter. "Yil needs to prove himself," another added. "His father was a great leader, respected by all. The son must show he's worthy of the same loyalty." As darkness fell, men began to arrive, joining the gathering. Leif returned with Eric, both carrying armfuls of freshly hewn wood for arrows. They gather by the fire, Leif instructing his son on shaping the shafts with a small knife, meticulously cutting notches for the bowring and the arrow head. As the evening progresses, more neighbors arrive, transforming the long house into an impromptu communal workshop and social venue. The ambiance evokes a traditional barn raising or quilting bee. Everyone cooperates toward a shared objective while exchanging news, jokes, and stories. A single musician plays a stringed instrument, akin to a lyre, and the space quickly fills with music. People sing along to familiar melodies, songs recounting tales of heroes, gods, grand journeys, and ancient battles. You realize this is more than mere entertainment. It functions to teach and reinforce cultural values. Courage, loyalty, hospitality, and cleverness are all celebrated within the verses. An older man with white hair and a deeply lined face begins to recite a poem in a rhythmic chanting voice. Everyone falls silent to listen, even the children who had been playing noisily in a corner. You recognize him as a skald, a poet and storyteller responsible for preserving the community's history and mythology through oral tradition. The poem recounts the creation of the world from the body of the giant Ymir slain by Odin and his brothers. It details Yggdrasil, the world tree, linking the 9 realms of existence and the gods of Asgard, who govern the affairs of gods and men. The skald's voice fluctuates dramatically as he narrates Thor's battles against giants, Odin's sacrifice for wisdom, and Loki's cunning schemes and subsequent treachery. These narratives, in fact, are not merely for amusement to these beings. It is a framework for comprehending the world, explaining everything from natural phenomena to human behavior. The gods and their narratives offer blueprints for living, warnings against transgressing social norms, and assurance that order exists in a seemingly chaotic and perilous reality. As evening deepens, the discussion invariably shifts to the impending raid. The Jarl, the local chieftain, convened an assembly of free men to discuss the plans in detail. These gatherings represent the Norse's closest form of formal government, where disputes are settled, crimes judged, and crucial decisions are made collectively. "Will you go with the ship's father?" Eric asked Leif, his young face serious in the firelight. Leif affectionately ruffled his son's hair and replied, "I'll go. A capable pilot, versed in the stars and the currents, is required. Furthermore, someone must supervise these young, restless individuals who have never left their mother's side. Though there is gentle amusement, underlying tension is palpable. Raiding is perilous, offering no guarantee of return. Everyone in the room knows that those who sail away may never return, lost to storms, enemy weaponry, or the myriad other dangers facing those who venture into unknown lands. Eric insists on the farm. The crops require care. Leif informs him this will be his duty, as he is old enough to handle a man's responsibilities. His mother will guide him, and Gunnar has also pledged to supervise. Eric straightens, clearly proud of this trust, but uneasy about fulfilling it. He solemnly vows not to disappoint, and Leif assures him gently that he will not. He possesses his grandfather's good sense. As the gathering dispersed, you helped Astrid clean up, collecting empty cups and bowls, sweeping the floor, and banking the fire for the night. She worked silently for a while, then suddenly spoke. "You heard what she said. Leif will go with the ships." You nodded, unsure how to reply. "He's a skilled navigator," she continued, "the best in the settlement. They need him again." You nodded, sensing she had more to say. "For 18 winters I have been his wife," Astrid says, her hands never pausing in their work. "I have watched him sail away many times, always fearing it would be the last. But this time is different. This is not trading with those who welcome our ships. This is taking what is not freely given." "Are you afraid?" You ask quietly, always for him, for what this means for all of us. She pauses, gazing into the fire's glowing embers. "The gods have set many paths before us. Some lead to glory, others to destruction. It's difficult to distinguish between the two until one has gone too far to turn back." The next morning, you return to Gunnar's forge as promised. Your muscles protest every movement, still sore from the previous day's unaccustomed labor, yet you find the work easier now that you anticipated. Gunnar appears pleased with your progress, even demonstrating how to hammer and shape heated metal according to his directions. You have a knack for it. Weapons and shields, painted in bright colors, are bundled and carried aboard to distinguish different warrior groups. During the midday meal, one walks to the shore to observe the preparations more closely. The long ships are truly impressive up close, sleek wooden vessels with high, curved prows and sterns, designed for speed and stability in rough seas. The largest vessel, perhaps 80 feet long, can accommodate about 40 rowers seated on benches that span the ship's length. A lone mast awaits a square sail when the wind cooperates. Crew members crowd the vessels, scrutinizing every detail with extreme care. Their survival hinges on these ships. A leak, a faulty rudder, or a ripped sail could bring ruin in the open ocean. You observe that each ship possesses a unique character, adorned with carvings on the bow and distinctive patterns on the sail. They are beautiful, aren't they? A voice speaks beside you. You turn to find Leif, gazing at the ships with unmistakable pride. Yes, you agree. Honestly, I have never seen anything like them, nor have the peoples across the sea, Leif says with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Our ships can sail in water shallower than a man's height and cross open ocean with equal ease. No other people have vessels like these. Is that why you're going? Because you can, you ask, wondering what motivates these people to undertake such risky journeys. Leif considers the question seriously. We go because we must, he says eventually. The land here is beautiful, but harsh. It doesn't always give us enough to sustain everyone. And a man needs more than just survival. He needs purpose, a chance to prove his worth, to make a name that will be remembered in the sagas. He gestures toward the largest ship. The Jarl has named her Seawolf. She'll lead our little fleet. 4 ships with 30 warriors each, enough to overwhelm any resistance quickly. There are not enough to prevent a swift retreat if necessary. When do you sail, you ask? 3 days hence. If Thor grants us favorable weather, Leif replies. The Jarl makes a sacrifice tonight, seeking the gods' blessing for our journey. That evening, after finishing your work with Gunnar, you join most of the settlement's population as they gather in an open area near the Wyel's Hall. A large fire burns in a stone-lined pit, illuminating the faces of the crowd gathered in a circle around it. At one end of the clearing, a wooden post bears carvings of the gods you recognize: Odin with his spear and missing eye, Thor with his hammer, and Freya with symbols of fertility and prosperity. The Jarl presides over the ceremony, a tall man of middle years, clad in a fine wool tunic embroidered at the neck and wrists, wears a cloak of bare skin fastened with silver brooches at his shoulders. His beard is intricately braided, and he sports arm rings of twisted gold, emblems of his wealth and status. Beside him is a woman in a long blue gown and a cloak of white feathers, a Velva or sire, who communes with the gods through trance and ritual. Her eyes seem fixed beyond the physical world as she sways, chanting words too low to be heard from your vantage point. The ceremony commences with Jarl raising his hands to the fire, invoking the gods to observe and bless the assembly. He speaks of the forthcoming journey, requesting favorable winds, safe travel, and success in their endeavor. He then turns to the Vulva, who steps forward, her face lit by the flickering flames. She initiates a chant that begins softly and builds, her voice acquiring a quality that sends shivers down your spine. Though you grasp the language the Norse speak in daily talk, her words sound like they originate beyond ordinary speech, perhaps an ancient form, or meant only for the gods. As her chant climaxes, men advance an ox, its horns adorned with garlands of early summer blooms. With a quick, practiced movement, the Yol draws a knife across the animal's throat. Blood flows into a wooden bowl held ready, and the Vulva dips a bundle of fir branches into it, then walks around the gathering, sprinkling drops of blood on the assembled crowd. When she reaches you, she pauses, her eyes meeting yours with an intensity that feels like she's looking directly into your soul. She says something in that strange, archaic language, then moves on, leaving you wondering what message she might have delivered. The ox is immediately butchered, with some parts burned as offerings to the gods, and the remainder is prepared for a communal feast. As the meat roasts over the fire, horns of ale and mead are distributed among the onlookers. The mood transitions from solemn ritual to celebration, filled with music, dancing, and boasts of history and future triumphs. You remain near Astrid and her family, feeling somewhat detached in this unfamiliar ceremony. She perceived your unease and quietly explained, "The blot binds us to the gods, securing their favor for the voyage. Without their blessing, the vessels would be at the mercy of giants and other perils hidden in the world's depths." The banquet continued late into the night, mixing formal rites with revelry. Oaths are sworn upon a sacred ring, promises to share spoils fairly, to stand together in danger, and to bring honor to their people and gods through their deeds. As the celebration peaks, you are drawn into a dance around the fire, hands linked with strangers who, for this moment, accept you as one of their own. The pulse of drums, the flicker of fire, the swirling motion, all merge to evoke a bond with something greater than oneself. It is perhaps a view of what these people feel when invoking their deities. Afterward, weary yet thrilled, you return to the longhouse with Astrid's family. The night sky above is clear, stars spread like frost upon a dark mantle. Leaf indicates specific constellations, detailing how they steer mariners when no land is visible. The stars remain unchanged in faraway places, he muses. No matter the distance we traverse, they observe us as constant as the gods. Gazing upon those ancient stars, which shine in your own era, you sense a fleeting link across the ages, a bridge between this realm of deities and fighters and the one you departed. Maybe, in certain aspects, people have not evolved as much as you imagine, still seeking guidance in the stars and meaning in the universe. You settle onto your sleeping bench. Muscles ache from work and dance, your mind full of strange and wonderful sights. Sleep descends quickly, deep and dreamless, as your body adapts to this new world. The next 2 days rush by in a flurry of activity as the settlement prepares for the ship's departure. You persist in working with Gunnar, your hands calloused from labor, your arms hardened by tending the bellows. The forge remains alight as weapons and tools are fashioned, mended and sharpened. Other artisans are equally engaged. Woodworkers shape oars and shields, women sew extra garments, and prepare provisions for the voyage. On the morning of the 3rd day, you awaken to the sound of a horn from the shore. The sailing day has dawned, bringing a mixture of excitement and tension across the entire settlement. Following a rushed breakfast, everyone congregates at the beach where the 4 ships wait, gently bobbing in the fjord's calm waters. The vessels are now fully loaded, provisions and weapons securely stowed for equilibrium. Shields drape along the gunwales, their vivid colors offering both defense and a striking display. Each ship features an animal-headed prow. Wolves, dragons and serpents, carved and painted figures appearing alive in the morning light, await to guide their vessels through unknown waters. The warriors embarking will bid farewell to family and friends. Some are solemn, others boisterous, yet all share a common anticipation of what is to come. Many wore their finest clothing for this departure, tunics of good wool with colorful trim, cloaks fastened with decorative brooches, arm rings and necklaces that displayed their status and wealth. Life embraced Astrid tightly, then placed his hands on Eric's shoulders, speaking words of encouragement and responsibility to his son. The boy stood straight, trying to appear confident and mature, despite the tears threatening the corners of his eyes. "Watch over your mother," Leif instructed. "The farm is in your hands until I return," Eric promises, his voice breaking slightly. "May Thor protect you," Leif replies, ruffling the boy's hair one last time before turning to board his ship. The Jarl steps forward to address the crowd before departure. He stands tall in the bow of the lead vessel, the Seawolf, his cloak billowing in the breeze, a polished helmet gleaming on his head. "Today we sail toward a new future," he proclaims, his voice carrying across the water. "Our ancestors have always followed the paths of the sea, trading with distant lands. Now we go further, seeking the wealth that will sustain our people through hard times. The gods have shown us this path through dreams and signs. They sail with us." A cheer rises from the assembled crowd. The Jarl continues, "To those who remain behind, tend the farms, care for the elderly and young, keep our settlement strong. Your contribution here is as vital as ours across the ocean. When we return with treasure and stories, the celebration will recognize all who made it possible." Another cheer, and then preparations for departure begin in earnest. Men take their positions at the oars, 30 to each ship. Others prepare to push the vessels from the shore into deeper water. The ships have been carefully loaded. Heavier items, such as food barrels and water casks, were placed low in the hull for stability. Weapons and personal belongings were stowed under the rowing benches, or along the center line. You stood with Astrid and Eric watching as Leif took his position near the steering oar of the second ship. He raised a hand in farewell, and then his attention turned fully to the task at hand, calling out instructions to the oarsmen as they prepared to depart. With a final horn blast, the ships began to move. They are pushed into deeper water, oars extending like great wings on either side, slowly dipping into the fjord in unison at first. Then, gathering speed, the vessels glide away from shore, their dragon prows seeming to come alive as they taste the salt water. Women and children run along the shoreline, waving and calling farewell until the ships round a bend in the fjord and vanish from sight. A strange silence descended upon the assembled crowd as they gazed at the empty water, each individual lost in their own thoughts and feelings. Astrid sighed deeply, then straightened her shoulders. "Well," she said briskly, "the fields won't plough themselves and the goats need milking. Life continues, and it does. With the ships gone, the settlement reorganizes around those who stay. Work that the absent men used to do is redistributed. Young boys like Eric assume greater responsibilities. Older men who remain offer guidance, and women oversee the smooth operation of farms and households. You continue working with Gunnar, who has stayed to ensure the settlement has a skilled smith for repairs and daily needs. He begins to teach you more advanced skills, such as how to judge the temperature of metal by its color, how to achieve varying hardnesses in a single piece, and how to add simple decorative elements to functional objects. A knife exemplifies this, demonstrating how to hammer a pattern into a blade, showcasing that beauty honors the gods who bestowed metalworking knowledge. Days unfold in a rhythm of labor, meals, and rest. Your body adapts to the physical demands of this era, growing stronger and more resilient. Your hands, once soft, now bear calluses that allow you to grip tools without pain. You learn to tell time by the position of the sun, to predict weather changes by observing clouds and wind patterns, and to identify edible plants in the surrounding forests. In the evenings, there remains time for storytelling around the fire. The Skald continues to share tales of gods and heroes, each story containing lessons about courage, honor, wisdom, or the consequences of breaking social norms. You realize these narratives function as both entertainment and instruction, strengthening the values that bind the community. About 2 weeks after the ship left, a storm sweeps through the region. Rain pounds the longhouse roof. Wind howls through wall gaps, and lightning flashes illuminate the darkness in brief, blinding bursts. Thunder rolls across the sky like Thor's chariot wheels, mirroring the Norse interpretation. Thor battles the Jotnar tonight. The old Skald comments as a particularly loud thunderclap rattles the building. The giants who bring storms and devastation. Children cling closer to their mothers, both terrified and exhilarated by the display of divine might. Some adults even make the sign of Thor's hammer for safety as lightning flashes nearby. The gesture a swift motion from forehead to chest, then shoulder to shoulder. During a brief lull in the storm, Eric expresses the collective anxieties. Will the ship survive? No one can be certain. Everyone recognizes the dangers of the open sea during storms. Even the best-built vessels can be overwhelmed by massive waves or wrecked on rocky shores. Prayers are offered silently and aloud for the absent warriors, with their names specifically mentioned to draw the gods' attention to those needing protection. Morning reveals the storm's damage. A few roof sections were torn away, chicken coops overturned, and fields partially flooded. The community collaborates to make repairs, sharing labor and materials as necessary. There is no formal governance structure to make these decisions. Cooperation is simply understood as essential for survival. This is how we have always lived, Astrid explains when asked about the organization of work. Each family prioritizes its own needs, but none thrive if the settlement as a whole suffers. We mutually support one another because we may need assistance ourselves tomorrow. This practical philosophy applies to all areas of life. For example, when a family's cow has twin calves, the surplus animal is given to a neighbor whose cow perished last winter. When a child is sick, women skilled in herbal medicine pause their own work to care for them. When game is taken, the meat is divided according to need instead of being solely claimed by the hunter. It is not a flawless system. Observing tensions between certain families, old grudges simmering beneath the surface, and clashing personalities, the harsh realities of survival in this era compel a level of cooperation that supersedes most conflicts. A month elapses with no communication from the raiding party. This is not surprising, even in favorable circumstances. The voyage to the British Isles requires several weeks, and the raiders intend to remain long enough to justify the journey. Nevertheless, anxiety intensifies as time extends. Then, on a clear afternoon, as many people labored in the fields, a shout echoed from the fjorded entrance, where a boy served as lookout. Ships returning. Work ceased as everyone rushed to the shore, straining to see the approaching vessels. Relief flooded the crowd as 4 dragon prows appeared. All ships were accounted for, all returning together as they departed. But as they drew nearer, it became clear that the journey had exacted a heavy toll. One vessel rests noticeably lower in the water, its sail bearing numerous patches. Another displays hull repairs, featuring fresh wood lighter than the surrounding weathered planks. On all the ships, fewer faces are visible than departed. The vessels land with less ceremony, with warriors diving into the shallow water to assist in hauling them ashore. The first men to arrive are met with embraces, tears, and rapid inquiries. Where the answers bring good news, there's joy and laughter. Where they don't, there's the beginning of grief. You remain with Astrid and Eric, anxiously watching for Leif among the returning warriors. Minutes felt like hours as they spotted him assisting a limping comrade from one of the ships. Leif appeared thinner than when he left, with a healing cut visible on his forearm, but otherwise unharmed. The reunion was emotional. Astrid fiercely embraced her husband, while Eric tried to maintain dignity despite his clear relief and happiness. Leif hugged them both, his weathered face showing exhaustion mixed with pride. "You've grown," he told Eric, measuring his son's height against his own. The farm looked well tended. "We had good weather most days," Eric reported seriously, "and the Southfield had stronger wheat than last year." Leif nodded in approval, then turned to include you in the conversation. "And what has your experience been like while we were gone? Has Gunnar exhausted you completely?" Before you can reply, shouts direct all attention to the ships where men are starting to offload their cargo. Trunks and bundles are exchanged between people, each piece accumulating on the shore in impressively large piles. The goods being unloaded are not what you might have anticipated from raiding. There are no obvious church treasures or religious artifacts. Instead, you observe practical items such as rolls of fine cloth, bundles of iron tools, sacks of grain, and containers of salt. Luxury goods also appear, including silver coins, arm rings, glass vessels, decorated weapons, and small ornaments of unusual design. Most surprising are the people being led from the ships, about 20 men, women, and a few older children, with their subdued demeanor and simple clothing marking them as captives. These are the captives, you realize with a shock. Slaves taken during the raid, brought back to work on the Norse farms and households. Seeing your expression, Leif explains matter-of-factly, "We need more hands for the fields and crafts. These people will eventually become part of our community, learn our ways, and perhaps even earn their freedom." His casual demeanor regarding what you perceive as horrific practice sharply illustrates the great divide between your modern values and those of this age. Slavery is simply an accepted element of their world, as it has been throughout much of human history. The raiders view no wrong in seizing human beings as property, just as they view no wrong in taking other possessions that are not theirs. The Jarl calls for attention, standing once more at the bow of his ship, now firmly beached on the shore. The crowd fell silent to hear his words. "The gods favored our journey," he proclaimed. His voice carried across the assembled community, though at a cost. "We lost 5 good men to a storm on the outward voyage, and 3 more to the defenders of the Christian temple we raided. Their names will be remembered in our sagas, their courage celebrated in our songs." He paused as murmurs of sympathy and prayer moved through the crowd. Families of the lost men drew closer together. Their grief is fresh, yet tempered by pride in how their loved ones died. However, our success far outweighs our losses. The Jarl continues. "The Christian temple at Lindisfarne proved rich beyond our expectations. Its treasures were poorly defended by monks who knew nothing of fighting. We took gold, silver, precious books, and fine cloth. We took thalls to strengthen our workforce, and we took knowledge of other such places, equally wealthy and equally vulnerable." A cheer erupts from the crowd, particularly from the veteran warriors who endured the experience. Yill raises his hands for silence once more. "Tonight we feast to honor our fallen comrades and celebrate our victory. Tomorrow we will divide the spoils according to our pact. When next summer arrives, we shall sail again with more ships and warriors to claim the riches awaiting us across the sea." The announcement sends a wave of excitement through the gathering. The success of this initial raid established a foundation that would blossom into decades of Viking expansion across Europe, fundamentally altering the continent's political map and Norse culture. That evening, as promised, a grand feast was held in the Jarl's Hall, the settlement's largest structure used for public gatherings and ceremonies. Long tables were laid out, benches positioned on either side, and food was prepared on a scale rarely witnessed outside of religious festivals. Some bounty stems from the raid itself: sacks of foreign grain baked into bread, kegs of unfamiliar ale, and exotic spices, lending new flavors to familiar dishes. The Jarl's wife oversees the preparation, directing both old and new thralls in the massive task of feeding the community. You join with Astrid's family at a table in the hall, where Leif's status as a shipowner and respected navigator grants him moderate honor. The most prestigious seats are located near the YL at the head of the hall, where ship captains and the most distinguished warriors, along with their families, are seated. As the feast continues, Leif recounts the journey in greater detail, including the challenges of navigation, the storm that nearly destroyed one of their ships, and the thrill of spotting land after nearly 2 weeks at sea. The monastery was situated on an island, linked to the mainland by a narrow path that submerged at high tide, he explains, sketching the layout in spilled ale on the wooden tabletop. We timed our arrival for dawn when the tide was high enough to bring our ships near, but the light was still dim enough to conceal our approach. Were there no warriors to defend it? Eric asks eagerly, hungry for tales of battle. Leif shook his head. Only monks in rough woolen robes. Some attempted to fight using farming tools or kitchen knives, lacking any training or real weapons. Most fled or surrendered when they realized they could not win. The treasure, Astrid inquires, was more practical in her interests. Plentiful, as the UAL said, it included gold crosses studded with jewels, silver chalices, and boxes filled with coins. But the strangest treasures were their books, pages of thin material covered in tiny marks bound between covers decorated with gold and jewels. The monks appeared more distressed by these losses than anything else. As Leif speaks, a thrall girl, perhaps 14, approaches with a pitcher to refill cups at your table. She keeps her eyes downcast, moving carefully as she pours ale. You notice a bruise on one cheek and a healing cut on her hand, likely sustained during her capture or return journey. When she reaches Leif, he stops her with a gentle hand on her arm. "What is your name, girl?" Watching her depart, he pondered her story, her family, and the life she once knew before Viking ships reached her shores. The feast continued late into the night, with alcohol flowing freely, causing the atmosphere to grow rowdier. Warriors reenacted moments from the raid, sometimes with exaggerated flourishes that drew laughter from the crowd. The skald composed verses on the spot to commemorate particularly brave or clever deeds, ensuring they would be remembered in the community's oral history. Music filled the hall, featuring drums and simple stringed instruments, along with flutes crafted from bone and wood. People danced in the open space between tables, their movements energetic and sometimes acrobatic. Even children joined in imitating their elders until they dropped from exhaustion and were carried to sleeping furs arranged along the walls. Amidst this, the Jarl observed from his high seat, accepting congratulations and tributes from his people, his success as a leader confirmed by the raid's outcome. His authority was bolstered by the wealth he would distribute tomorrow. In a society where leadership relies on personal charisma and demonstrated skill instead of formal titles or inherited privilege, such visible achievements are vital for retaining power. Late in the evening, when many are already spent from fatigue or drink, the vulva appears. The crowd stills as she enters, her feathercloak spectral in the hall's firelight. She walks to stand before the Yiel, carrying a staff adorned with brass ornaments that softly jingle. "The gods have spoken," she announces, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "They are pleased with our offering before the voyage and with the courage shown by our warriors. Odin welcomes the fallen to his hall, where they feast even now, as we do here." A murmur of approval runs through the assembly. The families of the deceased find great solace in this declaration, knowing their loved ones have earned the highest honor a warrior can attain, a place in Valhalla, Odin's Hall of Heroes. Yet the gods also issue a warning. The Velva persists, her tone becoming more ominous. "Our triumph introduces new perils. Other nations will learn to fear our vessels and prepare defenses against us. And some among us might grow too proud, forgetting that all victories stem from divine favor, not solely human strength or skill." She fixes her gaze directly on the Jarl as she speaks these final words. Attention fills the air. Her warning could be seen as criticism of his leadership, a dangerous public stance. But the Jarl merely nods solemnly. The god's wisdom is always welcome. He responds carefully, "We shall remember both their favor and their warning." Satisfied, the Velva withdraws, allowing the feast to continue in a somewhat subdued atmosphere that gradually returns to celebration as more ale is consumed and the music resumes. You find yourself next to Gunnar, who has remained relatively sober throughout the evening, observing more than participating in the revelry. "What do you think of our raiding ways now that you've seen them?" he asks, using the term Viking in its original meaning, the act of going raiding rather than a name for the people themselves. The question catches you off guard. "It's different from what I expected," you admit cautiously. Gunnar chuckles a rare sound from the usually serious Smith. "Most things are," he observes. "Tales grow in the telling like trees from seeds. 100 years from now, who knows what tales they will recount of this first raid? Perhaps they will claim we were giants who breathed fire and consumed Christian infants." His cynical humor surprises you, implying a perspective more nuanced than you initially believed. "Was it right?" you ask, your voice low. "The raid, you mean?" The Gunnar takes a long drink before answering, his scarred face thoughtful in the dim light. "Right? Wrong? Those are complex words. Was it necessary? Probably. 3 poor harvests in succession. Fish stocks are declining in our usual waters. People were hungry, fearing winter. Now they are not." He gestures toward the thralls serving at various tables. For them, their lives have changed. Yes, some for the worse, at least initially, but many will eventually become part of our community, marry our people, raise children who will not remember any other life. Is that better or worse than if they had remained where they were? Who can tell? His pragmatic view mirrors the reality of this time. Morality is frequently a luxury reserved for those whose survival is assured. For people living near subsistence, choices are driven by what guarantees the continuation of the family, the community, and their way of life. As the celebration concludes, you walk back to Astrid and Leif's long house with their family, now including Flade, who trails silently a few paces behind. The night is clear, stars brilliant in the dark sky. A path lit by occasional torches marks the crossroads in the settlement. Eric, though tired, remains excited by the day's events, peppering his father with questions about the voyage, the foreign lands, and the fighting techniques used during the raid. Leif patiently answers, though he softens some of the harsher realities for his young son's ears. Astrid walks in silence, her expression thoughtful. Later, as everyone prepared for sleep, you overheard her speaking quietly to Leif by the banked fire. "Things will change now," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "This success will lead to more raids, more wealth, and more danger." "The world is always changing," Leif replied, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We must change with it, or be left behind. And our children, what world are we creating for them?" Leif offered no immediate answer to this deeper question. He draws her near, both staring into the glowing embers, seeking glimpses of the future in the dying flames. As you rest on your sleeping bench, you ponder how this initial raid at Lindisfarne will affect time, initiating events that will reshape not only Norse society, but much of Europe. The Vikings will found settlements in England, Ireland, Normandy, and as far east as Russia and Constantinople. They will shape language, law, art, and technology wherever they travel. They will be recalled as both savage raiders and adept merchants, explorers and conquerors, destroyers and constructors. And it all starts here, with vessels returning filled with spoils, with a celebration marking triumph, with schemes already taking shape for the next summer's journeys. You are observing the genesis of the Viking Age, a critical historical juncture unfolding around you in its intricate, conflicting splendor. Sleep arrives slowly as your mind processes all your experiences. When dreams finally take hold, they are filled with dragon ships navigating unknown waters, singing tales of gods and heroes, and showing faces of Norse and thralls caught in the currents of history, carried toward unimaginable futures. The morning after the feast brings a more solemn, organized event, the division of plunder among those who participated in the raid. This event occurs in the open area preceding the Jarl's Hall, where the entire community gathers to observe the proceedings. The distribution of wealth is not solely about material gain. It functions as a public performance that strengthens social bonds and hierarchies within the community. The Jarl personally oversees the division, seated on a carved chair brought from his hall. Before him lay the spoils of Lindisfarne, arranged on woolen cloth spread over the ground, silver pieces sorted by weight, jeweled religious objects, bundles of fine fabric, weapons, and practical items such as tools and cooking vessels. As per our pre-sailing agreement, the Jarl announces the goods will be divided, 1/3 for equipping the ships and supporting the families of the fallen, 1/3 allocated among all who sailed based on their contribution, and the final third for my discretionary distribution to reward exceptional service. This formula is universally accepted, likely a traditional arrangement that is understood and deemed fair by all. The Jarl first allocates the initial third for community needs. The rest is divided among the warriors based on their expedition roles. Ship captains receive more than standard crew members, and those who fought exceptionally well or contributed specialized skills, such as navigation, are awarded bonuses and recognition. Leif, serving as both shipowner and chief navigator, receives a substantial share, silver arm rings, a finely crafted sword from Frankish lands, likely acquired via prior trade rather than directly from Lindisfarne, and several lengths of English woolen cloth superior to anything locally made. "This cloth is for you," he tells Astrid upon his return to his family's location. "I will retain the sword for now, but it will become Eric's when he is ready." The boy's eyes widen at this promise. The inheritance of weapons, particularly fine ones, is a significant tradition, holding both practical value and symbolic meaning as a marker of family continuity and status. The spoils taken during the raid are distributed to the Jarl, who first selects several strong men and a skilled woman weaver, then allocates the remainder based on need and merit. There is no effort to maintain family cohesion. A mother and daughter are separated without ceremony, despite their clear distress. Fade, already assigned to Leif's household, remains silent throughout the proceedings, her face carefully blank as she observes her countrymen and women being distributed like any other items. One wonders what thoughts behind that controlled expression, what memories of home and family she silently holds. The distribution ceremony ends by noon, but its impact spreads through the settlement for days afterward. New wealth generates opportunities, resources for superior tools, components for diverse foods, and luxury goods that enhance status. Those who most profited from the raid, such as life itself, achieve greater standing in the community, their views gaining more influence in talks, and their friendships more actively pursued by others. Summer advances, bringing long and generally agreeable days in these northern regions. Crops flourish in the fields near the settlement, carefully managed for maximum harvest. Fishing is ongoing in the calm fjord waters and beyond when the weather allows. Children collect berries and edible plants from the forests, enriching the community's diet. You continue working with Gunnar, your skills advancing steadily under his gruff tutelage. The forge evolves into a space of both labor and education, where you absorb not only techniques, but also the stories and wisdom of the experienced smith. Iron, Gunnar recounts, remembers this, demonstrating how to fold and refold metal to create blade patterns. Each hammer strike, each heating and cooling cycle shapes its essence. Like people, our experiences forge us, temper us, making us strong or brittle based on how we are treated. Life in Leif and Astrid's household adapts to include Fleed, the English thrill. Initially withdrawn and silent, she gradually integrates into daily routines. Her weaving skills prove useful, and she rapidly learns Norse out of necessity. You observe that though she is clearly not considered an equal, Astrid treats her firmly but kindly, and Eric develops a protective stance toward her after deterring local boys who were mocking the foreign girl. She is now part of the family. You overhear him telling the other boys that father brought her back for our household and that no one disrespects what belongs to us. His possessive phrasing makes you uneasy, but you recognize that in his mind belonging to them offers a form of protection and a defined place in the social order. It's a complex relationship that cannot be simply categorized as purely exploitative or benevolent. One evening, while helping Fleid carry water from the stream, you manage a private conversation away from Norse. "Northumbria," she replies after a cautious glance around. "My father was a craftsman at Lindisfarne. He made books. She struggles to find the Norse word, eventually resorting to a gesture of turning pages. And your family, were they? She shakes her head sharply, cutting off the question. Dead now, better not to speak of them. Her abrupt response silences further questions, but as you walk back together, she adds softly, it helps to work, to learn. If I am useful, perhaps someday. She trails off, but her meaning is clear. Throws can eventually gain freedom in Norse society, especially those who prove their value and adapt to their new culture. This glimpse into Flea's perspective reminds you that history is lived by individuals with their own hopes, fears, and strategies for survival. Beneath the major historical events, invasions, conquests, and cultural exchanges lie countless personal stories like hers, most remaining unrecorded. As summer peaks, the Jarl summons another meeting to deliberate plans for the coming year. Success at Lindisfarne has fueled desire for further raids, and intelligence from that expedition has uncovered other enticing targets along the coasts of England, Scotland, and Ireland. We should build more ships, one man argues during the discussion. 4 were sufficient for Lindisfarne, but targeting larger settlements or anticipating resistance requires greater numbers and more trained warriors, another suggests. Many young men who remained behind this year are eager to join the next voyage. The debate persists, featuring diverse perspectives on priorities, strategies, and balancing raiding with the settlement's continuous needs. Unlike modern political systems with clearly defined voting procedures, decisions here arise through discussion, persuasion, and gradual consensus building, with the Jarl holding significant but not absolute authority. The assembly concluded with pacts to start building 2 more ships during the winter for training young warriors and to forge stronger ties with nearby Norse settlements, potentially adding to the raiding fleet next summer. Funds from the Lindisfarne raid will finance much of this preparation, creating a loop that will drive Viking expansion for generations. As autumn nears, work accelerates. Harvests are gathered, fish are caught and preserved, meat is smoked or salted, and fruits and vegetables are stored to remain edible throughout the long northern winter. Every community member participates in this essential work, with children and the elderly contributing according to their abilities. You find yourself drawn into these activities alongside your ongoing work with Gunnar. The harvesting possesses a satisfying rhythm. The swing of a sickle through golden grain, the gathering of sheaves, the threshing that separates valuable kernels from the straw. Though physically demanding, this labor occurs within a social atmosphere, with songs, stories, and jokes alleviating the effort. This is how it has always been, the old Skald tells you as he rests in the shade. Too frail now for heavy work, yet he contributes by entertaining the workers. From the dawn of our ancestors, harvesting has been both labor and festivity. It is a period when the community unites to secure survival through the coming dark months. As days shorten and the air chills with the approach of winter, the settlement prepares for the winter solstice celebration, known as Yule in the Norse calendar. This festival honors the year's longest night and the sun's subsequent return. A pivotal shift, both practical and spiritual, demands preparations weeks ahead. Special foods are made, bread is baked in ritual shapes, and meat is set aside from the autumn slaughter. Ale is brewed stronger than usual. The longhouses are thoroughly cleaned and decorated with evergreen boughs, symbolizing life's continuation despite winter's apparent death. Activity commences before dawn on the solstice and continues late into the night. A colossal bonfire is constructed in the central assembly space. Its blaze symbolically invigorates the diminished sun. The Jarl offers a boar to Freya, the deity of fertility and abundance, seeking his benediction for the ensuing year. The community shares a banquet more opulent than the one marking the raiders' return. Tables are supported by the mass of food, roasted meats, dried fruits, bread, cheese, and confections crafted with precious honey. Ale and I flowed freely, their intoxicating effects viewed as part of the spiritual experience, a means of connecting with divine forces. Music, dance, and ritual blended throughout the celebration. Children ran laughing through the settlement with torches, symbolically restoring light to the world. Couples slipped into the darkness, their unions during this sacred time believed to be especially blessed. Elders recount the gods' tide celebrations in Asgard, drawing parallels between divine and human experience. The vulva practices divination rituals, casting runestones and interpreting their patterns to predict the coming year. Her prophecies are intentionally vague: good harvests if the gods are honored, successful raids if courage remains, and health for those who maintain proper relations with divine powers. These predictions provide both guidance and flexibility, enabling adjustments based on future developments. Near midnight, in the deepest darkness, a solemn ritual occurs. The Jarl and other community leaders swear oaths on a sacred ring dedicated to Freya, pledging to uphold laws, protect the settlement, and honor the gods in the coming year. These promises hold both religious and social weight, obligating the leadership to their duties and reinforcing the community's shared values. Leif participates in this oath, placing his hand on the ring and speaking words that commit him to specific actions for the coming year, including leading one of the ships in the planned expanded raids. Eric watched with pride and longing, anticipating the day he too would be recognized as a man capable of participating in such rituals and expeditions. The Yule celebration lasted 3 days, gradually shifting from formal religious observances to more relaxed socializing. Work was minimized during this period, limited to essential tasks such as tending animals, a welcome respite before deep winter arrives, ushering in shorter days, colder temperatures, and the season's inevitable challenges. In the Viking settlement, winter is a time of contrasts. Outside, the world seems dormant. Fields are snow-covered, the fjord occasionally freezes near the shore, and daylight is limited to a few hours. Yet inside the longhouses, life persists with surprising vigor and variety. This is the season for indoor crafts, weaving, carving, and the repair of tools and equipment. Men construct ship components, shaping strakes and fashioning dragon heads for the bows this spring. Women spin and weave, transforming wool into the fabric that clothes the community. Children acquire these skills with their parents, learning through observation and gradual participation rather than formal teaching. Evenings are spent on storytelling, music, and games. The old skald recounts myths of gods and heroes alongside stories of the community's ancestors, thereby preserving their memory and actions. People engage in board games like Honey Faithful, a strategic challenge simulating defense against foes, or simple dice games blending chance and wagers that inject excitement into long winter nights. You learn that the Norse are far from the uncivilized barbarians often depicted in later European writings. They possess rich artistic traditions in wood carving, metalwork, and textile design. Their poetry adheres to complex structural rules, meticulously employing alliteration and rhythm. Their grasp of navigation, shipbuilding, and weather patterns demonstrates sophisticated observational science, independent of formal scientific methods. The winter has passed more swiftly than anticipated. Each day was filled with work, learning, and social engagement. You settle into the community, becoming more established. No longer an outsider, you possess recognized skills and contributions. Gunnar offers to take you on as a formal apprentice when spring arrives, a significant step providing a defined role and a path to eventual independence. However, your growing integration into Norse society also introduces complications. As you comprehend their language and customs better, you are expected to fully engage in all aspects of community life, including religious ceremonies honoring gods destined for displacement by Christianity, preparations for raids that will bring violence to innocent communities, and the everyday acceptance of thraldom that conflicts with your modern ethical principles. These tensions culminate one evening when Leif, while inspecting the growing pile of woodwork for his ship, speaks directly about your potential role in the upcoming raiding season. He observes that you have grown stronger since arriving, watching you help move a newly carved oar into place. Gunnar notes you learn quickly and suggests you could be useful on the ships this summer. The invitation, despite its practical framing, catches you completely off guard. Engaging in a Viking raid offers unparalleled historical insights and direct experience of events, typically only known through fragmented records and archaeology. However, it also involves complicity in violence and theft, potentially including the taking of lives and liberties from individuals such as Fade. This is a significant opportunity, therefore, consider this carefully, mindful that outright refusal may jeopardize your standing within the community. The leaf subtly signals its comprehension of your hesitation, if not its precise nature. Consider this. There is still time before we must determine the ship's company. That night, sleep eludes you as you wrestle with this dilemma. Your presence here has not altered the course of history. Lindisfarne was raided exactly as the historical record indicates, and the expansion of Viking activity follows the timeline. You are, after all, an observer of these events, not their cause. Yet joining a raid shifts your role from observer to participant, a transition that feels deeply disturbing. Your thoughts are broken by a soft sound nearby. Sitting up on one elbow, you see Flide awake on her sleeping bench, her face glistening with silent tears. She is unaware of your gaze, lost in her private sorrow, lit only by the faint glow of the banked fire. This sight sharpens your moral dilemma. Real people endured the historical events unfolding around you. To participate would be to directly cause that suffering, regardless of how inevitable these events are in the larger sweep of history. Before you can decide how to respond, whether to comfort Fade or offer her the illusion of sleep to grant privacy in her grief. A more dramatic interruption occurs. Horn blasts slice through the night, sharp and urgent, the signal of danger or attack. Within moments, the longhouse erupts into activity as Leif leaps for his sword and calls for others to wake. Raiders come from the south, 3 ships bearing the shout. The irony is stark, the raiders face a raid. This region, characterized by scattered settlements, limited formal governance, and wealth amassed through trade and plunder, presents a landscape where such attacks are inevitable. Not all Norse are allies. Different groups contend for resources and status, occasionally through violence. Leif is already fastening his sword belt. Eric turns to you, asking for help gathering valuables in the forest should they breach the settlement. You ask if you can fight. This is a moment of choice in multiple ways. Defending the community that sheltered you feels distinct from joining an offensive raid. Yet violence is violence, and you lack training with Viking-era weaponry. I will do my utmost, you answer, which is truthfully ambiguous enough to satisfy Leif, who nods and tosses you an axe. It is not a specialized battle axe, but a common woodcutting tool usable as a weapon in an emergency. Outside the settlement is an organized chaos. Women and children gather essential supplies and prepare to retreat to predetermined hiding places in the surrounding forest if needed. Men arm themselves and form fighting groups led by the Jarl and other experienced warriors. Older boys act as messengers between groups, delivering orders and information. The sound of battle already joins from the shore, shouts, clashes of weapons, cries of pain and defiance. The attackers have boarded their ships and are pushing into the settlement, meeting resistance from those who were on watch or quickly responded. Arriving with the late tide and using darkness for cover, a breathless messenger reports to the Jarl, estimating 20 or 30 warriors at least. Their target, the Jarl demands. The hall, the messenger replies, is most likely. They know of our success at Lindisfarne. The Jarl nods grimly. Then we defend the hall, Osgrim, take 10 men to the western approach. Leif, your group holds the direct path. I will lead the main defense at the hall itself. Leif gestured for those assigned to him, including you, to follow as he moved toward a position between the advancing raiders and Jarl's hall. In the darkness, with only partial moonlight and scattered torches providing illumination, it was difficult to see clearly what was occurring. You stayed close to Leif, axe tightly gripped, your heart pounding with fear and unwelcome excitement. Hold fast. Leif directed the men with him. Let them come to us. We know this ground. They do not. You take cover behind a woodpile, affording sight of the path raiders would likely tread. Minutes lengthen into hours as you wait, straining to interpret distant conflict sounds, attempting to gauge the battle's progress within the settlement. Then, sudden movement in the darkness ahead, shapes quickly moving between buildings, seeking shadows. Leif signals silence, allowing the approaching group to draw nearer before revealing your presence. When the raiders are 20 paces away, Leif gives the signal. 3 archers from your group loose arrows, finding targets with practiced accuracy. 2 raiders fall immediately. A third staggers but persists. Then close-quarters combat ensues as the groups clash. The violence is unlike choreographed movie fights. It is chaotic, desperate, and brutally direct. Men seek immediate killing blows, eschewing the extended dueling shown in films. A sword thrust to the gut, an axe to the neck or face, a spear driven through a thigh to bring an opponent down for a finishing blow. The fighting is quick, savage, and terrifyingly efficient. You recoil, overwhelmed by the reality of combat, until a raider bursts through the line and charges directly at you. Instinct takes over as you swing your axe, aiming more to create distance than to strike a lethal blow. The axe head caught the man's raised arm, cutting deeply. He howled in pain but persisted. With his other hand, he held a sword before he could reach you. Eric, who was meant to aid his mother, but had obviously joined the fight, appeared suddenly and thrust a short spear into the raider's side. The man collapsed, his sword falling harmlessly to the ground. Eric stood frozen, eyes wide with shock at his action. This was clearly his first kill. A moment both traumatic and transformative. You pull him back to safety as the fighting continues around you. His face is pale in the moonlight, breath coming in short gasps. "I killed him." The boy stammers, part horror, part disbelieving pride. "You saved me," you reply, holding his shoulders steady. "Breathe, stay focused. We're still in danger. The warning is timely. Another wave of raiders is approaching." Having breached defenses elsewhere, Leif and the rest of your group retreat toward Jarl's Hall, the focal point of the main defense. You keep Eric close during the withdrawal, scanning for attacks from the sides or rear. The hall is fortified for defense, with shields reinforcing the walls and men positioned at all potential entry points. You join the defenders inside, where the YL directs operations with calm authority, despite blood staining one sleeve from a wound already received. "They seek our Lindisfarne treasure," he tells the assembled men. "Perhaps they believe we are still celebrating Yule, our guard down and our reflexes dulled by ale. They will learn differently before this night ends." His confidence is justified. While the raiders benefit from surprise, the defenders possess superior numbers, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and the motivation to protect their homes and families. The battle lasts perhaps an hour before the attackers, having suffered heavy losses and making little progress against the organized defense, begin to retreat. As they return to their ships, a cry from outside prompts their flight. There is no immediate celebration. It might be a deception, or the raiders could regroup for another assault. The Jarl maintained vigilance, dispatching scouts to verify the enemy's withdrawal and hunt for any hidden within the settlement. Morning exposed the price of the night's fighting. 6 defenders were dead, and another dozen sustained wounds of differing severity. The raiders left 8 of their own dead, plus 2 so severely wounded they could not be moved, now captives who will likely become thieves if they survive their injuries. The settlement has also suffered damage. Several buildings burned, stored goods were stolen or destroyed, and animals were killed or scattered. However, the main target, the wealth from Lindisfarne kept in the Jarl's Hall, remains secure. A somber ceremony is held for the fallen defenders. Their bodies, equipped with their weapons and personal belongings, were prepared for burial as faithful warriors who died protecting their community. The UL recounts each man individually, detailing his virtues and contributions, ensuring his memory is preserved in the community's oral history. They feast in Valhalla. The UL concludes honoring the guests at Odin's table. Their courage will inspire us as we rebuild what was damaged and strengthen our defenses against future attacks. Eric, now publicly acknowledged for his first kill despite his young age, stood taller during the ceremony. This experience aged him, accelerating his transition to adulthood in a society that highly values martial skill. Life observed his son with a complex expression, mixing pride with a parent's natural concern, acknowledging that the boy was irrevocably changing. In the following days, the settlement focused on repairing physical damage while processing the emotional fallout of the attack. The experience has challenged security assumptions, prompting greater focus on defenses, more frequent patrols, enhancements to the simple palisade encircling the center, and better alarm systems. This also speeds up preparations for the upcoming raiding season. We have witnessed the fate of those who amass wealth without the means to safeguard it. The Jarl observes this during a meeting convened to revise plans. We must achieve both prosperity and power, instilling a fear that makes others hesitate before attacking us. This perspective is logical, given the current era's lack of a governing authority to ensure security and enforce laws. Communities must either protect themselves or become vulnerable. The same vessels facilitating trade and raiding act as a deterrent when displayed in a settlement's harbor, signaling strength and mobility that potential assailants must acknowledge. For you, the raid provides unexpected clarity. Experiencing violence directly, the threat to yourself, and witnessing the killing around you crystallizes your feelings about participating in the upcoming expeditions. When LA raises the possibility again, you have a ready answer. You tell him you are grateful for the offer, choosing your words carefully to avoid offense. But you believe you serve better here, continuing your work with Gunnar and helping maintain what is needed at home. Instead of disappointment, life offers understanding. Not everyone is suited for the raiding life. He recognizes that the settlement requires skilled crafters as much as warriors. The Gunnar praises your progress. This conversation signals a turning point in your relationship with the Norse community. By choosing a clear role, you have transitioned from an ambiguous outsider to someone with a defined position in the social structure. You are becoming, in their eyes, and perhaps to some extent in your own mind, part of their world instead of just an observer passing through. Spring arrives, bringing longer days, milder weather, and renewed activity across the settlement. Fields are being prepared for planting. Fishing increases as the fjord becomes more navigable and the construction of new ships proceeds quickly. Now that the wood has been properly seasoned over winter, the vessels are taking shape on the shore. Longer and more imposing than the existing fleet, this vessel class is specifically designed for the dual purposes of raiding and transporting significant cargo back home. Their dragonhead prows are carved with particular ferocity, intended to strike fear into those who see them approaching hostile shores. By late spring, the expanded fleet stands ready, 6 ships that can carry nearly 200 warriors, along with supplies for an extended journey. The planned raids are more ambitious than last year's expedition, aiming not only for isolated monasteries, but also for trading centers where greater wealth may be discovered. Leif will captain a ship, his navigational skills being too valuable to ignore. Despite Astrid's clear worry about him leaving again, Eric, though keen to join the raiders, is still deemed too young. A ruling that causes bitter arguments until Leif finally asserts himself with uncharacteristic sharpness. The farm requires you, he tells his son firmly. Your mother requires you. Prove yourself capable of these duties, and next year we will discuss SOAR ratings again. As departure day nears, you are drawn into the preparations despite your choice not to sail. Gunnar compels you to work long hours on necessary metalwork, repairs to existing weapons, fittings for the new ships, and tools for the voyage. The forge burns constantly, and your skills are pushed to their limits by the variety and volume of tasks. On the eve of departure, a ritual similar to previous years occurs. The Ulva performs sacrifices. Blood is spilled upon the assembled warriors, and oaths are sworn to guarantee proper conduct during the expedition. Yet the tone shifts. There is less doubt, more confidence derived from prior victories and greater abilities. The UL declares that the gods favored us before, and they will favor us again if we earn their blessing. We sail not only for ourselves, but for our families, our settlement, and our ancestors watching from Odin's hall. Let every warrior remember this. Your actions across the sea will resonate here, bringing either honor or shame to your name and lineage. The departure itself, seen at dawn the following day, is a grand sight. 6 dragon ships, their sails illuminated by the early light as they enter the fjord's deeper waters. Oars rise and fall in perfect synchrony, carrying men whose expressions reflect excitement, resolve, and sometimes fear of what awaits. You stood with Astrid, Eric, and the rest, watching until the ships vanished around a bend in the fjord. An odd silence settled over the gathering after the last vessel disappeared from sight. A collective sigh relieved the tension, followed by the slow return of conversation as people turned to the tasks to occupy them during the men's absence. And now we wait, Astrid says simply, her expression composed despite the concern which she feels. We work and prepare for their return, as women have always done when men seek glory in distant places. Her words capture an essential aspect of Norse society during the Viking Age, the division of roles that sends men to raid foreign shores while women maintain the home community. Each gender possesses its own sphere of power and responsibility. a necessity-driven partnership arising from harsh conditions and limited resources. It shapes family structures, social organizations, and individual lives. Life in the settlement follows a routine similar to the previous year. While raiders are absent, fields are tended, fishing persists, crafts are practiced, and children are raised with the constant understanding that survival requires everyone to contribute according to their abilities. The community naturally realigns itself around the older men, adolescent boys, and women who assume leadership roles typically held by the absent warriors. You continue your apprenticeship with Gunnar, your skills advancing to the point where you can now complete simpler projects independently. There is deep satisfaction in this progress, creating objects of both beauty and function with your own hands, knowing your work tangibly contributes to the community's welfare. Weeks elapsed with no communication from the raiding fleet, which was anticipated. Since there was no postal or communication system for distant shores, everyone knew news would arrive only with the ships themselves, hopefully carrying new wealth, but possibly also reports of loss and failure. Then, on a clear summer day when many were working in the fields, the lookout boy at the fjord entrance gave the signal. Ships approaching, sails visible on the horizon. The community mobilizes quickly, work abandoned as people hurry to the shore to see which vessels return and who they carry. As the ships draw closer, a cheer rises from the crowd. All 6 vessels are accounted for. Their dragon prows cut proudly through the water as they make their final approach to home. The raiders have returned, apparently successful, in their ventures across the sea. But there's something different about this homecoming. The vessels transported not only spoils, but also household items and extra personnel, including women and children, along with the expected troops. Furthermore, some warriors exhibited injuries more severe than those typically incurred during brief raids, indicating prolonged combat or even engagements against organized resistance. As the vessels reached the beach and the warriors disembarked, it was clear this expedition differed significantly from the previous year's quick attack on Lindisfarne. Leif, though thinner than when he departed, was otherwise unharmed. He embraced Astrid and Eric before including you in his greeting. "We have much to tell," he said, his expression suggesting experiences that were both triumphant and sobering. This journey had changed everything. As the returned raiders share their stories during the celebration, you realize the expedition's true significance. They targeted not only monasteries but coastal settlements, venturing into lands untouched by Norse ships. They set up a winter camp on a small Scottish island, using it as a base for ongoing operations instead of immediately returning home. Most importantly, they have returned not only plunder but knowledge. Detailed information concerning lands, peoples, defenses, and opportunities that will guide Norse expansion for generations. The Viking Age is now truly active, evolving from isolated raids into a systematic exploration and exploitation of territories across the North Sea and beyond. That night, while tales circulated around fires in the settlement, you realized you were witnessing history unfold in real time. The transformation of Norse society through contact with outside cultures, the genesis of changes that would eventually lead to the Norman conquest of England, the settlement of Iceland and Greenland, and even the first European discovery of North America centuries before Columbus. The world is shifting around you, molded by dragon ships and the driven men who command them, the societies that sustain those voyages, and the intricate mix of need, chance, valor, and ruthlessness.